So let's talk about this policy attributes with kind of our overall data governance, data catalog content, and think about like how you might want to track it. So first of all, we have various types of content. We've got the a business glossary and a data catalog, a data model item. We're going to go through a lot of these things. You can either take some of that content, and the privacy code is a good one to think of, and you can sort of say, hey, you can directly tag a column on a table as being PII. You can directly tag a table in a database as PII. You can directly tag a data system as containing PII. You can tag a report, right? So that's like the directly updating that policy attribute to that item. But you may also want to support or encourage inheritance from either a child or a parent. So what that means is inheriting from a child would be, I'm tagging a column in a table as PII. Then the parent, being the table, may, in an ideal situation, would automatically sort of say that it contains PII. Like you wouldn't have to go tag that, right? Or if you have a report, if you have a business glossary term that has a technical definition that says, hey, I've got this thing called age in my business glossary, and it refers to birth date in a technical definition for one of the data systems, and that birth date is tagged as PII, then you might want to have that business glossary inherit that thing, or just saying it includes that. So either directly inherit or inherit. And inherit from the parent is the same thing too. So maybe you have a business glossary term for, you take age and you mark age as PII on the business glossary term, and then down inside that you've got a technical definition that says, oh, that's done by, either a field called age or by calculating by birth date. And it might say, hey, should those technical fields on your business glossary inherit that? Or you have a report and so on. So anyway, we'll show a little bit about that, but you want to think about this inheritance. And also maybe having this concept of contain. So it's different, but important to say that this contains versus is directly. So you might have a data system that contains PII, but the entire data system might not be PII. So one way to think about this is you've got kind of ingredients, like, so here we've got like spaghetti and coffee and nuts or whatever. And if you're going to make some recipe or something from this, let's say we make a pie, and the pie is made with nuts and flour and a bunch of other things. If you've got nut allergies, right? So you might have this concept of warning, may contain traces of nuts. So once you start having a pie that uses nuts, like then that, or has the opportunity to use nuts, and that's where that warning comes in. So think about that here. There's a little difference between like is nuts versus may contain nuts. So lastly, when you go and when you decide, however you're planning on implementing these policy attributes, I would recommend that you think about having a status and status date associated with that. It does add a bit of complexity, but in terms of informing and feeding people who need to take action on this, it is really helpful. So what I mean is, let's say that you have, you go through an effort and you tag, we'll talk about, again, ways that you can create this content, but you go through an effort to identify as many of the tables and columns and things in a particular data system as whether or not it contains PII or if it's sensitive or whatever. And then you take that information, you feed it over to the DBA and say, here are all the tables that we identified that contain PII. Can you please encrypt them? And then they do. And then like 6 months later, someone goes through and adds, like identifies some new tables and things like that, okay? And then you want to inform the DBA that there are a couple new tables that contain PII. Well, if you don't know like the date that status was added, or maybe it was removed, you're not going to be able to tell them, here are 2 more tables that you want to add, because if you're going to run a report for them of all of the tables that have PII, it's just, and you don't have a date, you just have the fact that they're PII and you don't know when it was added as PII, it will be, it's going to be difficult to inform them. They're going to have to do some sort of comparative was already there. So if you're able to keep track of like when this status was added, or when this attribute was added, or when it was removed, it can be helpful for you to do sort of change analysis reports of new things that have been identified with a particular policy, right? So something to think about as you create that, and it's something that we're doing in terms of the policy attributes in the cookbook. Just a little side note. This is a major enhancement for us, is to take what used to be tracked as just sort of custom fields to track policies, and to put a lot of these policy attribute behavior around inheritance and reporting as a big part of it with status and status dates.